have a very young, vibrant, not so young, vibrant Kora volunteer member who has been so up and doing in the person of Timile Mercy Kelani, right? So I'll be calling upon her. Let's welcome her. She comes to the stage. So, Mercy, this is your own session. I'm going to be handing over the mic to you. You introduce your discussants. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, like you heard, my name is Kelani Mercy Timilei. Kora Book Trek in itself is a project of Kora, and the aim of this project is to enlighten the youth, to enlighten them, to empower the youth, to promote literacy, to encourage the reading culture, and to ensure that our youth are well equipped with necessary books and with the knowledge for the future. Join me as I invite Mr. Olabisi Ajakaiye, author of In My Country Ejiro. Also joining us this evening is Mr. Wale Adeduro, author of Obalende, A Nation in Motion. So I would read a short bio of the two authors from their books here. Olabisi Ajakaiye is passionate about writing and exploring. He obtained his first, second, and third degree in urban and regional planning. He works and lives with his family in Lagos, Nigeria. Wow, urban and regional planning. And he's a writer and author. Please, a round of applause for him again. Mr. Wale Adeduro is a results maximizer, productivity coach, and mentor of high-impact leaders. He is also an accomplished agri-business consultant. An alumnus of Lagos Business School, he has multiple doctorate degrees in productivity, Christian education, as well as theology and philosophy. He is also a Maxwell Leadership Certified Coach, speaker, and trainer from the USA. A round of applause for him again. Okay, firstly, before we dive into the books, I would like to ask the authors, one after the other, to give us a brief summary of what their books are about. The audience, most of the people in the audience have not read the book. Or has anybody read any of the books here? If you've read the book, please wave your hands. So yeah, they would like to know what the book is about, so they can gain insight about the book, so they will not be left, they will not be left alone along the path while we discuss the book. So over to you, Mr. Olabisi.
Thank you very much. Nice being here. Thank you for having me. If My Country Had a Jury, what inspired it? Number one, I thought about it. Nigerians, how do we judge? What influences our judgment? Is it sentiment? Is it religion? Is it ethnicity? Is it tribe? So I thought about it. If we oftentimes we blame the judge when they deliver verdicts, or let me say decisions that are contrary to what we expect, that we consider disappointing. So I asked the question, what if the judgment was in the hands of the people? Would they judge any better? Hence, I thought about it. If Nigeria had a jury, would our judiciary be any better than what it is today? So it made me think about something, a rape case. In most instances, when there is an issue of rape or when there's a rape case, the victims do not come out because they are often traumatized and maybe even victimized all over. Now, if we are to handle the rape case with a jury to make the decision, would it be any better? Now that is precisely what influenced this case. This book. So the book considers, just like it's done in the West, 12 average regular persons, regular people, they are called by the state to adjudicate a case. But this time around, considering Nigeria's diverse ethnicity, people from the south, east, west, north, people from different socioeconomic background also were all assembled to adjudicate this case. And how they went about it, how they could not extricate their regular lives and struggles and general being from the case is what the book is about. And it makes you the reader, it makes you ask yourself the question, would you do any better if you were called to make a decision on a rape case or any other case whatsoever if you were to serve as a juror? Would you do any better? And what exactly would influence your judgment? Is it evidence? Is it sentiment? Is it religion? Or whatsoever?
I'm glad to be here again. I appreciate every member of Kora and all of you guys who have organized this event. Now, Obalende, A Nation in Motion, first and foremost, was conceived as a project to assist my boss to succeed. I mean, that's the truth. That boss is Mr. German Anikulapo. When he was appointed as editor of, I think, Arts Saturday, I think Arts editor in The Guardian, we needed to do one or two things differently. And you know him, he co-opted me. He said I must do something by force. And in thinking of what to do, after a few days of research and all that, I thought we should do something that has to do with Nigeria, so that, because things were happening those days and everything was just, before you sleep and wake up, just like now, things just change so fast. So it's okay. Initially, it was just a nation in motion. But among the few things I did was to read one or two books. I read Ake by our esteemed father and Prof. Wale Soyinka. I also read Just Before Dawn by late Kolio Motosho. So I looked at it and said, these are basically commentaries about Nigeria, but situated in different locations. And again, I said, okay, Prof was born in Abeokuta, he wrote Ake. I was born in Obalende. Let me situate this story around Obalende, and that's how it was conceived. It was basically a commentary, a social commentary on the political developments in that season, shortly before civil rule. And I was privileged to have been born at the time of military rule when Dodan Barracks used to be the state house. So many stories, so many things that we grew up with. And so in doing that, we had to now pick one or two characters to just tell the story about Nigeria from the viewpoint of a young girl who was a victim of the system. And that's how Obalende was conceived.
So, Mr. Olabisi Ajakaiye, I was going to ask what inspired the book, but you already answered that earlier. So, can you introduce the major character of the book to us and the major themes that the book addresses? Yeah.
Thank you very much once again. The major character in the book, I wouldn't say major character, I would say there are a set of three major characters, all young. Number one is the lead lawyer, his name is Alade. From the average, let me say below the average socioeconomic class, just graduated law school. Oh, I forgot to mention something. The book is futuristic in nature. It is set in the year 2050. So it imagines what Nigeria is going to be like in 2050. And the plot also is not in Lagos, but in Abuja. So everything took place in Abuja. Now, the first person is Alade, just graduated from law school, trying to find his foot in the legal industry. His friend, Ifeanyi, did not make the bar exam, but they worked together. He served as an investigator, as a legal investigator. And the friend, her name is Temi. She is the tech person, obtaining all the information online, hacking, doing everything possible to ensure that he gets what to fight or what to tender in the courts as evidence or against the witnesses by the defense for something they call the witness impeachment. Those are the three major persons. Now let's talk about the theme. The theme is legal in nature, like we have expressed. Like I expressed earlier, it's legal in nature, and it essentially looks at how the legal frame works. It looks at how the legal frame let me say, the judicial frameworks in Nigeria.
Can you also introduce us to the protagonist of your novel?
Okay, Obalende is the story of a young girl called Afyong, who was born in Obalende, and all the developments that were happening as he was growing up. The two major characters are Afyong and Afyong's mother. There is a silent character, the father of Afyong, because a typical Obalende setting, a one-room apartment, what we call face me and face you. So all the events and the commotion that were happening in that house were basically reflective of what was happening in the bigger society. But in terms of the storyline, basically, there were many things happening, violence, all the election issues, but it started with the military coups, all those coup d'etats, all those things that were happening. So it's just the trauma that a young girl growing in the Nigeria of the late 70s into the 90s, before the Second Republic started. And everything that was happening out there was affecting that young girl. For example, whenever there was a coup, because they lived next door to Dodam Barracks, the first staccato of gunshots, especially in 1976 and all that, would be heard straight. In fact, there were cases where some people, especially two girls, were killed in Obalende by stray bullets during those coup shootouts and all that. So those are the traumas that the girl went through. And of course, in spite of all that, you know, people tell us that Nigeria is the happiest country in the world. It's always been like that. One night, everybody is hiding from gunshots. The next afternoon, everybody is eating suya in the night. Girls, boys, men, everything is going on. So all those roller coaster kind of events happened. Christmas was a big deal. Easter, killing Judas Iscariot was a big deal. Children had caricature. Judas was the one that killed Jesus. They had to kill him. So all those things happened. Then, of course, the culture, the mixed culture of Obalende. Basically, Obalende was ordinarily a settlement for military guys those days. They used to be around there, around King's College, but they were moved out to that settlement. So you had a lot of military crew, so a lot of northerners. So it's a potpourri of different cultures, Igbo, Yoruba, and all that. And of course, the beauty of that Obalende setting that I grew up in and that we captured there was a place where you didn't have burglary proof in your house. In fact, nobody was locking the door. We were that safe. So you see all those things. But as things progressed, because of the looseness of the community, these young girls will join everybody around from house to house, eat from house to house, party from house to house, events happen here and there. Then there is also this white sand. It used to be around the CVU where you have St. Gregory, artists and all that. It was a rendezvous for young people in the night, go and play. There was Brother Agbero in the house, took Afyong there. One of those days, Afyong became pregnant. Afyong became HIV positive. Things went upside down. But the bad thing about it is that in all those stories, the medical issues, there was strike in hospital, so many things happened. At the end of the day, which was the end of this, which was like the end of this story, is that she became pregnant. She was HIV positive, and the mother was so faithful, believed God that God was going to do something. Along that line, the story was ending, but the question was this. This was a young girl who had so much promise. Now, the mother couldn't challenge anybody because of society. Talking about stigma. The mother couldn't challenge anybody because it wasn't a rape case. But again, but Agbero denied that he was the one responsible. The mother, because of shame, said, let's go and do abortion. So many things happened, and the boy became HIV positive. And that's the story.
So could you please give us a brief summary of the book?
My book, titled Distortion, is based off my background in the career that I do, which is journalism and media. I do a lot of investigative stuff. I delve into topics nobody wants to talk about, especially social issues. And what happened was COVID-19 was the defining moment when I knew I had to write something about Nigeria. I noticed something was happening amongst us, and one of the things I observed was, for example, the issue of fathers raping their daughters was so common. I did an investigative piece in that. Then I discovered too that rape was prevalent. The issue of child trafficking was prevalent. Baby factories were everywhere, happening. Orphanages that were not true, were not real, but being presented as if they were orphanages, but they were all baby selling, child trafficking centers. So when I discovered this was happening, and governments were also involved, I knew I had to tell a story. Aside from that, I also discovered there was something that happened, which took me all the way to Port Novo. I don't know how many of you know about the case system, the OSU case system. It looks as if it's somewhere buried, but it's not buried. It is very much alive. There was a lady who got married eventually, but not from her own place in Imo State. She had to run away to Port Novo so that she can escape the supposed curse that was placed on her own lineage. Meanwhile, as at 1956, the Wale of Onitsha, the late Ajakaiye, made a law, the law was passed, that nobody is subhuman, that everybody matters, that the idea that racism, blacks are always against it, was shocking to me when in Africa here, we practice something similar to racism. I felt that was a distortion. Then a situation where I started working with, because the investigation took me to a point where I had to work with NAPTIP, who were in charge of trafficking in Nigeria. And we were trying to remove many children from many homes where the parents sometimes were actually domestically, violently assaulting them. Now, during the COVID-19, it was so bad that we couldn't rescue many of these children from homes where they were being battered. In the whole of Nigeria, there are only 8 shelters in the whole of Nigeria. 8 shelters, as it were, in 8 states, where people who are oppressed in homes can't even escape to. So during that period, we had so many children because, you know, back then in COVID-19, everybody was like, who knows whether these children are susceptible? Who knows whether you have this virus? And so nobody wanted to be close to children who may have viruses because they had not been tested. And that's what led to the book. I began to document every form of distortion I noticed under COVID-19. The case system, the fake orphanages, cryptic pregnancy, that's surrogacy, and all the forms. And what I did, which was kind of outstanding in a manner of speaking, even if I had to say so myself, but based on the feedback I also got, was the ability to be able to tie all of these things with various characters. And I think just to celebrate my career as well and the space we are in, I made one of the key persons, one of the key characters there, a journalist who was going to uncover some of these stories. So essentially, that's where the base of this came from.
Thank you. Thank you. So, back to you, Mr. Olabisi. While your book is set in 2050 and futuristic, does it prefer solutions to the current failing judicial system of Nigeria?
And I believe most of us here are familiar with Nollywood. Now, you agree with me that in most Nollywood movies, there are flashbacks. In fact, sometimes there are flashbacks in flashbacks. And I ask myself the question, why are we always going back? What is propelling us towards the future? What is making us prepare for the future? Everything is past, past, past. Even if you look at this, go to the cinema today, majority of the blockbusters are things that happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I mean, during those colonial times. And we don't have as much things that we can look up to. Okay, this is what Nigeria is going to be like in 30 years' time, 20 years' time, 50 years' time. So I thought about it. Why don't we think forward this time around and not reflect back? So that's the reason I set it in the year 2050. Now back to the question of...
Does it prefer solution?
Yes. And you say that's... I will answer that question with a question. Let's think about it. Does Nigeria's problem have a solution? I've thought about this several times. Because you try to bring up a solution, it is met with a lot of roadblocks. I'm grateful there's a journalist amongst us. She can tell you the truth. Because I did a lot of research on my own also in the judicial space. And I got to realize that so many times we blame judges for some controversial decisions or verdicts. But you don't know that there are a lot of things going on in the background. Take example, something like dates for appearance. Do you know sometimes lawyers have to bribe the clerks or this court staff to get a favorable date? Which is not even within the ambit of the judge. The judge is not aware. So there could be solutions, but the question is, are we ready for solutions? If you are ready for solutions, trust me, there'll be solution. Let me go off the book and come into real life, the Dangote refinery oil issue. And I mean, we all thought, oh, Dangote refinery is here, we are going to be selling oil, will be everywhere, it will be cheaper, we are no more importing. Ask yourself, has that solved the problem? So the same applies to the judiciary. When we are ready to solve our problems, we will solve our problems.
Okay, so back to you, Mr. Wale Adeduro. One thing that is very obvious, that is apparent in Obalende Nation in Motion, is that it addresses societal flaws. How are you passing this message to adolescents out there who are currently victims of what Afyong experienced? You know, it was set in the 80s, right? But the same challenges that Afyong experienced then are still happening in our current society. So what is the message you're passing across to young Afyongs out there?
Thank you, ma'am. The message basically is that for young people, they need to be careful about who they choose as their mentors or guides. Because Afyong actually chose Brother Agbero. She got closer to Brother Agbero, who was guiding her until he guided her into the path of pregnancy and HIV/AIDS. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that young people should trust their parents. Because especially teenagers have a way of not wanting to trust their parents, because that is a season that every child wants to rebel against norms and established order. But the truth of the matter is that in this book, when the chiefs were down, the only person that Afyong found was her mother. And this same mother was actually, for those of us who were there are those days of Worldwide Wrestling Association, whatever, Mighty God. They used to call her Mommy God. That's how radical, violent, aggressive the mother of Afyong was. The mother of Afyong was a very aggressive mother. I'm talking about violence at home, you know. So when even this matter happened, Afyong didn't know who to talk to because she thought her mother would kill her. But the truth is that her mother, in a twist of a second, said, when everybody was wondering what happened, the mother said it was malaria. That it was malaria. I said, don't worry, we will talk about it when we get to it. So again, but the point is that at the end of the story, the girl said, oh, my mommy, I will always love you. Because she never loved the mother. So the message for young people is, the only people you can trust are your parents. And even among your parents, but between your two parents, if you are a girl, trust your mother more.
Thank you so much for the answer. Okay, to Lady Ejiro. Yeah. So your book also addresses similar themes to Mr. Wale Adeduro's novel. but just that you're portraying yours through the investigative lens. So, your book also certifies, let me add, your book also certifies that the government is not our only problem. The society is also a problem on its own, because you mentioned that Ajakaiye already passed the law that they should stop the caste system, but now people in the society still practice it. So what is your message to the society? What message are you trying to pass across? Are you trying to prefer a solution, or are you trying to advise that, okay, we stop this, and how are you advising that the caste system be eradicated?
Okay, so my book is actually a mental health crime book.
Okay.
It's deliberate. Because what I did was I played with all the mental dysfunction that Nigerians are exposed to. Anytime I come to Lagos, I always say Lagos is a very traumatized city. I see it in the faces of the people, and I ask myself every day, how do you guys cope here? I have never survived in Lagos well. I have never. So what I do is I come to Lagos and I dive out. But then I now realize that there's a general theme for all of us in Nigeria, which is that we are a highly traumatized society. The caste system is an example of a very traumatized people who feel they need to demean another person to show their own superiority. Remember that the caste system began because there was also the Osu ideology and belief system, where you were dedicated to the gods and then you served the gods. Those are our ancient practices, and there were nothing wrong with that. It's just that because of the way we shroud information in African society, we did not understand that we hid so much of our traditional belief system. So because they were not decoded, right? And everything was so codified, what happened to us is it was just easy to misunderstand what the Osu case stood for. I mean, Osu rather, belief system stood for. The dedication to the gods and the gods of significance. In the context of distortion, what I wanted to do was this, and incidentally, I need to even mention this, and I think we achieved one of the things I set out to do with distortion. The Delta State Ministry of Education has approved this book as a literature of study for students.
Wow.
Thank you. And why I'm happy about it is because we are starting what is called a national reading competition based on distortion. Oh yes, we're going to be announcing that and all of that. So. Why? We are a society that does not hand over stories to our generation of children, the one in the womb and the one that is born. So that we don't even have a history, a compilation of who we are, where we've been, and where we're supposed to be going. And because that is happening is why we are seeing a repeat of trauma in our society. Because we're not learning. We're not decoding things. We're not grasping. We are accepting, like my friend there said earlier on. He said, what do we do? The system demands that you submit your case as a case may be. But what do you want? You want a speedy response, as though somebody else does not want something speedy enough. So you are more important. And that also goes back to the case itself. When you create a social order that says A is more superior to B, simply because we said so, we've got a problem. So one of the aim of distortion is to, one, amplify some of these hidden conversations. Even this matter of a woman who is drinking the bath water of her husband's corpse was captured in this book. That's a distortion. You will never see any tradition that tells a man, your wife don't die, you so Oga, as if it's this ritual, you have to perform it. And performing it means you will go and sleep in that hut. You see that hut over there? Your dead wife's body is there. You will sleep with her for 14 days, or 1 month, 3 months, as the case may be. And you will not comb your hair. Okay, I'm looking at you now. You will not comb your hair. You will not brush your teeth. In fact, you will stand naked before the community, and then we will take care of your private hair and shave you. How do we have a society where we feel that is normal? And we call it what? Tradition. That's a distortion. That's a mental disembowelment of another human being. None of us will want it for our sister or our daughter. Why do we think the wife is perceived as somebody lower in the social order of a family? So part of distortion is to question every single belief system we have. Is to retell our narratives. Because Africans were not telling our narrative enough, and Nigerians in particular are not telling their narratives enough. Why do I say this? One of the reasons that influenced why we wanted to do the national reading competition was this. We interviewed a number of young teenagers. For every 50 teenagers we interviewed, you wouldn't believe that only one by mistake has read an African book written by an African author or even a Nigerian author. We have the data. And then when you ask them, which do you know of? This is how they do. That's for the girls. The boys, they go like this. I don't know. And then one will now finally say, Chinua Achebe. So, what do you remember about Chinua Achebe? What's the title of the book? I can't even remember the name, Seth Jari. Okay, do you remember anything that was talked about the book? They made us read it for exams now, so I just read it for exams. I can't even remember why I kept it. It's been long. This is a 16-year-old girl. 16-year-old. So that tells us something. That one, we have not made our children appreciate our own stories. They told me that they read only foreign literature. How can we have 200-something million people and the children who make up like 70% of that population are reading foreign literature? And they are proud to beat their chest. Is that not a distortion? It is, like they say, when they came and they conquered and they destroyed us, what they did effectively was they shattered our own self-esteem. And what is continuing to happen is we too, we are perpetuating it. They've often said that the racist who cries the loudest, or rather, the person who cries against racism the loudest, if given the chance where they have opportunities and privileges, they will do worse than the people whom they first condemned. May we not be a distorted people.
So the last round of questions before the Q&A session, I would like each author to read a very special chapter from their book, like maybe just an excerpt, so the audience have an idea of what the book is about.
I think I'll pass on being the first this time around.
Okay. Mr. Wale Adeduro, are you ready?
This is chapter 40, titled Mama Beauty. For once, I pitied my mom. Her love for me made her gullible. She could not bear to see me in pain. She wanted me to be comfortable, and I had capitalized on her love. She believed my lie about having pains in my feet. Desiring to alleviate my pain, Mommy knelt before me. She tried to remove my shoes, but the shoes proved challenging to remove. They became willing accomplices in my crime of insincerity. I was glad about it. At least, inanimate objects had come to my aid in my trying moments.
I think I'll just go through 2 paragraphs. Okay. Chapter 10, If My Country Had a Jury. So I start. The judiciary experienced a resurgence in information technology in the year 2045. The legal scene officially welcomed the virtual filing of cases, proceedings, and a host of other activities. The 2020 pandemic initially compelled the introduction of virtual court sessions, but the factors militating against it were enormous, hence the hiatus. However, virtual sessions have been embraced since 2045, credit to the reliable electricity and improvement in internet connectivity and its accompanying affordable cost. Most young lawyers announced the virtual option, but their counterparts preferred the traditional physical court appearance. However, all filings were done virtually. Not all were pleased with this. They had no alternative but to embrace it. Another positive angle to the enforcement of virtual proceedings was that it helped clear the backlog of pending trials, as more judges were employed without necessarily building additional courtrooms. Though litigations were conducted in physical and virtual, certain sensitive cases required physical appearances. Often, when judgment was to be passed in virtual proceedings, a physical session was conveyed on weekends. I think I'll stop here.
It's going to start with Mena, one of the most heartbreaking character in the book. Mena was tired of her life. The tears poured down her shrunken face. She missed her parents, especially her mom. They had been best friends before death snatched them along that dangerous Lagos-Benin expressway. She had been 13 years old at the time. Her uncle in Onisha had volunteered to take care of her with blessings from the extended family. Besides, he was the relative she was most familiar with, so she had to move in with him. But after months of staying at home, running errands without going to school with her uncle's wife, feeding her only one meal a day, she was tired of life. She was made to sleep on the cement floor in the kitchen, and now her skin was full of ringworms and other skin infections, while her eyes watered whenever she went under the sun. She wiped her tears and got up, resting her back on the kitchen wall. On different occasions, she had asked her uncle when was she going to resume school, but her uncle kept putting it off. It was clearly a promise her uncle never meant to keep. Instead, they had turned her into the family house help, a maid who ran errands and took care of the chores at home. For 2 years, she had bathed her younger cousins, took them to school, cooked the family's meal, did all the grocery shopping, and ran all the errands. She worked like clockwork from 5 a.m. till midnight. It was already late, but her uncle was still in the parlor watching the news. She heard the familiar signature tune of the news ending. Summoned in courage, she walked into the parlor.
Good evening, sir.
Yes? What is it again, Mena?
Uncle, school has resumed since, but I'm here to start.
Uh-huh.
But Uncle, you said that when I come to live with you, you will send me to the best school.
So? Have I said I will not?
It's just that I've stayed here for over...
Is this how you stand up and talk to your parents when they were alive? Your parents did not train you well. Now look here. You should be grateful I even housed you. Do I not feed you and do I not give you clothes?
Uncle, since I came to live with you, you've not given me any clothes. The ones I wear are the ones my parents bought for me.
Oh dear boy. Now I know that you're a badly brought up child. Well, since you are now under my roof, you will do as I tell you. And when time for school is ready, I will tell you which school has agreed to accept you. Now get out of my sight.
Thanks for the excerpts. We are glad that we have insight into the books. So I'm going to be asking the last question, and it's the same for everyone. So the book track aims to promote the reading culture. It aims to empower and enlighten youths. So I'm going to ask this question. What is your advice to youth? Because you mentioned when you were answering a question that students, in fact, youths do not want to read. They don't want to read for leisure. They don't even want to read to study. So what is your advice to them? Because the reading culture is, I would say, it's in slumber. Some people say the reading culture in Nigeria is even dead. So how does your book aim to revive the reading culture? And what is your advice to teenagers and youth concerning reading, the advantages of reading and promoting or reviving the reading culture? Should I start from you? All right, thank you.
Okay, now reading is one of the most important things. Without reading, you cannot write. Without writing, you cannot preach a message to the world. So how do we encourage reading? A lot of things that we can prioritize before, let me say deprioritize, before we can promote reading is social media. I think, I won't say I would suggest, but I think if we can put a lane, if we can put a leash on social media for a particular age, restriction, I think it will work. I think so. Then number two, I think our book clubs can promote Nigerian literature also. After I released this book, shortly after, I applied to some book clubs, and most of them, when I look at their pages, they're usually reviewing foreign books in Nigeria here, and I think that's a problem. Why don't we do our own things, promote our own things? Even if there are errors, we'll get better. We'll improve. Why do we have to rely on the foreigners all the time? Why do we look down on ourselves? Why do we push ourselves aside? So I think number one, we have to first, shall I say, relegate social media if possible. Number two, promote books. Very important, and I think that's it.
For me, I'll take it from where he stopped. It is too late to relegate social media. That's the reality. Because out there, babies below age 2, they don't eat without watching the screen. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. They don't sleep without watching the screen. It's not a good habit, but the reality is that it is one way that parents try to manage the crisis of raising children in this age and time. So what I think is that we should develop a culture that marries social media. For example, every book written, and this is for free, this is what we have been working on the last 1 year, should actually target the social media. All authors and book club owners and all that should target social media. The truth is that everybody is on social media, especially those who are writers, promoting their books, but the strategy behind the promotion is not strong enough. So for me, it's to make book reading appealing in the sense that I can go to Facebook and be happy to read a book. I mean, I think because that's where we are. The other thing is that we need to go back to where we were trained. Before I entered primary school, and I remember, because when I entered primary school, I was 1 month before age 5. So I remember very well. I had been reading Daily Times for about 3 years. I had been reading Daily Times for about 3 years, and I think Baba will remember, is it something on Saturday those days? Is it weekend or something? There was this Saturday or whatever that my father, it was compulsory for me to read, because my father would bring it. On Saturday morning, he would tell me and read. Whether you read or you say, okay, if you don't know, just say THET and all that. So we need to go back, because most parents are not spending time to do that. And that's why we talk about bedtime stories. When you tell bedtime stories to children, and there are a lot of books for children that you can still use to train children. But the truth is that in the last 20 years thereabout, most of those bedtime stories are not shared with children who have grown up. So we need to go back there to encourage them. Then of course, government has a role to play. Government need to encourage or persuade the corporate Nigeria to also support reading. It's not about, I mean, now today, I remember German, Abibiman will remember those days when we pioneered the conference on making the artist as a businessman, because nobody wanted to touch the artist. I organized the first seminar in Nigeria on making the artist to become a business person so that you can approach corporate Nigeria. I think the time has come for writers to also begin to package them, because out there are people, the only thing they do for a living is writing.
In other words, don't read. It's not negotiable. Many of us here, when he was saying and describing his background, I was laughing because that was my background. I grew up in a room where there was a library. How many rooms have libraries? Even if it's just someone that has. How many? Do your children, your nephew, your nieces, your cousins, do they see you reading? They are saying, go and read, do they see you read? People model after what they see. So we need to model it even more. And on social media, if we're going to encourage people to read, then they should be seeing more people doing reading. I need to be seeing you read an excerpt or a story or a chapter. And I'm like, oh, is that it? You tickle my audio sensibilities. Audio books are the rave. Why are they the rave? Overseas they're the rave because they have a culture where reading to children bedtime story is a practice. Our children will not learn to read out of the blues. All good habits are cultivated and then instilled and emphasized to the point where you keep promoting it. So it doesn't die with one generation. Where people who do not understand this generational transfer of wealth, of knowledge, expertise, we need to change that mindset, we need to shift. And then reading for me back in the day was for pleasure. It was for leisure. We used to read under the trees. While waiting in the bus, for example, I'm inside the bus, I'm reading a book. They're not going to come up for house if there's no book in my bag. As a help. It was a discipline, it was a lifestyle, it was a choice, it was a habit. So if you want to be a reader and you want children to be reading, you put it in their bags. Find one small fonts and put them in their bags. They will read. Ask them what they read in that book. My father had a culture. Every Saturday, he would sit down with me. All of the children, he gives to all of us. My time was 11 a.m. Saturdays. My dad would take a book and then he would ask me to go and read ahead the week before. I would have read, if I like, I finish all the reading, if I like, I finish a chapter, or we're doing something with it. And then we read a chapter by chapter, I mean, a paragraph by paragraph. And then we will ask questions based on each paragraph. That way you are exciting the cognitive ability of the person. You are making the person now with a challenge. Challenge your children with books. Hey, you know what? Our next cinema, when you're able to finish this book and tell me the story, you've got a cinema to go to. What would you like as gift for Christmas? This Christmas is coming. How many of us are thinking of gifting books to our children? We don't even gift them books. What do we gift them? Ice cream. What does we gift them? So we need to change our culture of what we gift. Here like this, how many children have been here since this lab started? How many parents have brought a child or a nephew because to events like this? These events have almost become like echo chambers of the same people, the same mind. It is not spilling out. We need to spill beyond what it is. This is commendable, it's extraordinary. But we need to do much more than that. We should be inviting our own people to be coming here. How many of us share the link to these events to our nephews and cousins? How many? The online one that they cannot come to and tell them, watch it, take notes, write something. Now, if you also look at the fact that education is key, we are a representation of our own educational system. And it's a lot of work. I don't know how the team here will start doing that. I don't know which other groups can come in. But we need to form a coalition where we begin to hold ministries of education accountable